Go ahead and admit. Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in just a second.
Good morning, everyone. So good to see everybody. Welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas holiday. Welcome to the spring 2022 semester. We're going to get started. Once again, welcome. So my name is Armand Rucker. I'm the Visa and Immigration International Coordinator in the Office of International Education. I'm pleased to present the International Scholar Seminar Series. And this event is hosted by the Office of International Education and with Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, also known as OLLI. I am pleased to present our speaker today. His name is Reuben Caputo. Ruben has been working in education technology for the past 11 years at CSU Dominguez Hills. After graduating from Biola University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Marketing, he obtained a position working for Apple's education team as a partner manager focusing on business development. It was during his time at Apple that he grew fond of working in the education world. So in 2011, he started implementing graduate level course curriculum design to the School of Education's Leadership Graduate Program. Furthering his educational background, Ruben obtained his master's degree in technology entrepreneurship from the University of Maryland. He is part of Google's EdTech team that promotes universal design particles to bring forth a more connected space for K-12 educators and learners. Ruben's leadership has gained him the role of academic advisor, and he's the general manager for the Esports Association, which serves upwards to 200 active students and or alumni. Ruben's technology background has earned him the active position of the College of Education's IT consultant under the IT academic division. He thrives to empower educators. He believes in equal access in order to personalize and bring engagement in education as one of the ways to better the world. Please join me in welcoming Ruben as he is going to talk about eSport, that is a student success strategy. Ruben, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Armand. Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone. We are in spring and we are in full effect. And it's amazing to think how time flies, right? And so I'm excited to be here today to get a chance to share a little bit more about what we're doing in esports in the industry. And I think there's more folks joining us. So let's see here. So fantastic. Well, I'll give a couple seconds here so we can get more people in, and we'll begin very shortly. But again, I just want to quickly address, I've been invited to share the seminar, and this is for you. So at any point you have questions, feel free to, chat them in the chat box below, or if you want to raise your hand, happy to unmute and then go forward from there. Again, this is really designed so that it can best serve to your interest, to your questions, and therefore we can go forward. All right. Hopefully everyone is excited. I'm just going to quickly survey the room. Who here knows about esports? Is that something that is very familiar, or is that something completely new? So if you know what it is, just raise your hand, just show of hand. Okay, there you go. I see a few hand raised, just a few, not too many. Okay, very good. So for any of them that don't know it, and if you were to Google search esports, what you most commonly would find is that it's competitive gaming, right? And we talk about gaming, yes, it's these video games that many of us, I'm sure, have grown up or have seen other family members at least play or interact with. And so we're going to go into that in just a second when I start sharing the screen, but I just want to make sure if we're good to begin. Okay, right on. Perfect. Okay, allow me to share my screen. One moment. Okay. All right, let's get to it. We're going to jump in. And as Armand mentioned earlier, the topic today is esports is a student success strategy. So we're going to dive in what exactly we used to essentially ensure that, and then share a little bit about our story. And again, this is for you. So at any point you have questions, feel free to interrupt. And then Armand or Anissa, I'm going to be relying on you on the time. So you tap my shoulder or give me the 2-minute warning or what have you. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you again. Honestly, we couldn't do this without the support. So Anissa, I'm really excited to have you, of course, supporting us in all the tech related needs and making sure that something like this goes without a hitch. So again, thank you for the Office of International Education. Without their support, none of this is possible. So we're very grateful to be here. All right, let's begin. So before we jump in, I'm going to share really quickly our pillars in just a second. So when we think about esports, for those that don't quite understand yet what esports is, again, it's using what gaming essentially we interact with, but expanding it to what it goes into beyond the interface. And so let me repeat that again. So essentially what we interact with, we are essentially taking away transferable skills from what you see from the interface and taking it beyond further to essentially connect the dots to the demand in the industry. So we are geographically located in Southern California, as we all know, and there's a big booming industry in esports and gaming. Okay, and this is where there's a plethora of options and concentrations that are eager to find what it is that our students are interacting with in this medium called esports. So for us, because we're an academic institution, we focused on these 4 pillars, which I will share in just a moment. Let's see here. There you go. Excellent. So we focused on 4 pillars that would essentially put us in a position to share our story, right? What it is that got us to this point, which I will share in just a moment. And because we're an institution that, will essentially always be focused in academics and research, we had to put that to the very top of our pillar totem pole, if you see there. Okay. And then with that, we also coupled it with community engagement. We need to make sure that something like this can bring people together. Doesn't matter shape, form, doesn't matter anything, right? We essentially want to make sure that this is something that everybody can engage with, not just one particular concentration, if not make this a multidisciplinary concentration. And then with that, what brings us together too as a form of community building is competition. So finding ourselves in a position to compete in these games, whether it's, to compete for a scholarship or for a prize or for prestige, what have you, competition is something that roots us to bring essentially an Excel format of ourselves in these spaces. And then along with that, it would be the entertainment factor, right? For those that are doing research around esports, you'll come to find that very quickly esports is overtaking what we see in traditional sports, right? So the viewership in some of the biggest venues, and one that we can think about that's coming around the corner is our Super Bowl, right? Super Bowl brings in a ton of viewership. Esports is very quickly already gaining more ground and traction because of the accessibility component, which is an area and field that I'm a big passion, that's where my passion lies, if you will, when it comes to the efforts and the work behind esports that takes us beyond essentially the competition, is bringing people together. All right. So in this seminar, I'm going to focus on 3 criterias, and I'm going to break it down as you see it here. And so all of this that you're seeing is our students here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And so we're going to move into this very first topic, which is esports and education, the skills, the exposure, and the student development. And then we're going to segue on to how we're going beyond the competitive gaming space, right? What you Google search, how we take it beyond that to find what those career opportunities look like. And then again, building esports facilities, technologies, all of that goes into essentially cultivating this space for students to get a chance to participate and be a part of. All right. If there's any questions, like I mentioned, feel free to put them in the chat. All right. Just to share some visuals with you all. And I'm happy to say there's a couple folks here, or Anissa, I think you remember, our Toro Hack events. There's a big history there that essentially allowed our esports students to propel. And so when I tell this story, our students essentially wanted to find a place to just hang out and build community. And that's how we organically started back in 2017. And so our students, had some time in between classes, I would say 3 hours to 4 hours in between classes, and didn't want to go home, didn't necessarily want to drive back or make any kind of other commute efforts. And so a way for us that got us started was, hey, let's just bring our own consoles and essentially bring community together, right? Basically bring in our own gaming stations and go to campus and play. And in that play, we're essentially talking back and forth and what it is that we like about the game. And from that, it started to slowly but surely starting to grow, right? It started with 3 members. And then from that student organization, we started to expand this growth and this, what felt like a movement afterwards. And we were just trying to find places to actually, just any outlet, right? Places to interact with. And so with that, this is where our students started to share a little bit more of the culture aspect, right? What does it mean when we talk some of the digital literacy that goes beyond the gaming atmosphere? And so this is where students got a chance to share some of their interests. And none of these students necessarily had the same major or concentration background of study. They all came from different concentrations. And it's basically became an area where students were finding community very early for those that didn't necessarily found themselves engaged, didn't have many student agencies that they could essentially apply some of their skills. And so these were the students that were more of the shy and modest that were approaching the student organization that led into this trickle effect that started to expand this movement in where we're at today. And so I share this because before exploring a criteria or an area of interest, we have to know, first of all, is there a community out there, right? Is there something that students are eagerly asking for? And perhaps they may not ask it or articulate it the same way you're looking for that information. That's where the research goes into, right? So that's where we're essentially asking those questions to see what it is that students are engaging with the most. And as educators or people that are looking to help and support, is meeting them in that middle space, that common area, right? Meeting them in those engagement points. And so that's where we started to expand our efforts behind that. So we had great other events that were happening on campus. There's a cybersecurity club within the student organizations that's managed and run. And there are events that they have to put up. And so one of them is called Toro Hack, which is an iteration to hackathons. And so for those that don't know what a hackathon is, it's something that stemmed over at the Silicon Valley, where it was a space to ideate, to bring ideas forward when it came to technology, right? How do we share certain projects that perhaps are passion projects, but it could help change how systems are ran or how things work? And we had different other organizations and industries that were approaching these hackathon or these Toro hacks, if you will, that were invited to our campus. Now, this is pre-pandemic time. So this is back in 2019. And so this picture was taken back in 2019. And so that's where we would culminate and have conference. And so that was our very first iteration to esports, to share with our community through gaming what some of our students were doing in different areas and expertise. So some students were competitors, some were more casual based, others like to broadcast, and they would have equipment system, what you're seeing right here today with you. So a big microphone and made sure they had the right software to overlay the effects of what's happening on the game screen. And then we had very interesting projects that students were promoting, which was this particular picture that you're seeing in the middle, right? What you're looking at is a traditional Pizza Hut cardboard box, right? So this cardboard box is something that you would find anywhere, right? After ordering pizza. And so a big area that we were focusing on was, hey, we needed to understand, what is it that creates some of these barriers to enter a space like this in esports. So we were sharing with some of our community members that were attending our session that some of these game controllers, if you look at the market today, they cost about the average of $60 to $70, right? So depending, what store, what location you find them at, right? And so for a college student budget, $60 and $70, that's a lot of money, right? And so not everybody has that. And so we were finding a way to lower barrier entries to participate in spaces like this. And what we were creating was essentially a esports arena feel. So essentially you have monitors, displays with consoles and controllers. In some of these places, this is again pre-pandemic when we had more events happening, is you would have to bring your own controller as your entry, right? So sometimes there was an entry quote unquote fee, but it was really about the fee was bringing your own device so that you can participate. So some of our students got together and essentially thought, hey, let's do something really neat and let's lower that barrier entry. And voila, an idea came about. And it was to change a cardboard Pizza Hut box and let's make it into a controller. So it was more of a fun way, novelty to look at it, but it was a way to also share some of the dimensions that this actually had, a lot of ergonomics to it. So meaning what you're looking at there is a Joy-Con, right? And you're seeing some buttons. In these particular game titles, some of these controllers are more conducive to this, right? So it's almost like recreating an arcade, if you will, within a cardboard box. And so that's exactly what our students did. And you can see in the third picture there, you can see the mechanics, the wiring, the controllers, all of that great stuff. And it was connected to a USB, so it worked on a console. And so we were testing this out. And lo and behold, we were surveying people that were attending and they tried it out, right? A lot of students wanted to take pictures of this and they thought it was really funny. How cool is that? A pizza cardboard box turned into a controller. But lo and behold, more people thought this controller actually had a lot more better use and mechanics than your traditional $60 to $70 controller. So after some surveying, what we found is that more people gravitated towards the cardboard box. And it wasn't just because of the novelty, right? You're thinking, oh, well, I want to take a picture with this, so be it. Well, all that being pricing, it was a big difference, right? So it went from, hey, typical $60 to $70 to it just took us $15 to create this controller, right? Plus the pizza, right? So 15 plus the pizza. We enjoyed the pizza. And essentially what we did there was to share, hey, we just did something to lower the barrier entries and also ideate, right? What it is that students were passionate about and start feeling out how this can be expanding into other fields and areas that would essentially be calling some of our students into the career pathways that we constantly are working for. And so I tell the story because it gets better. So what you just saw there is a student of ours worked at a Pizza Hut and shared this with his manager. The manager couldn't stop marvelizing at it. And I was told they were just like, I need to touch this thing. I need to play it. I need to use it. Well, that Pizza Hut manager sent it all the way to this corporate office, and their corporate office called me, right, and wanted to know more of the story. So when I shared the story, that's what led to a big sponsorship with Pizza Hut. And so Pizza Hut essentially put our students in position to sponsor them with commercials and free pizzas, and then ultimately into helping us start proposing our very first scholarship initiative that we're looking to do hopefully by this year. And so that's what gets us excited to tell these stories, right? It's that it was just pure grassroots organic approach to actually looking at esports as a whole, right? We didn't even talk about the competition per se. This is about getting us there to the competition. And we'll move on forward to how we started doing it with more intent and intentionality. Fantastic. I think there's some chats here. Let me just make sure. Oh yeah. No, I love it. I know. The whole Pizza Hut story, it cracks everybody up, but that's our story. So moving on to the next slide, unless there's questions at this moment, any questions? Am I making everybody hungry now? All right, sounds good. Let's keep pushing through. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, what is it that we're doing as educators to meet students in the middle, right? When I say middle, I'm talking about the engagement points. How do we essentially meet them into an area so that way they're exercising this strategy walkthrough, right? And I call it more of a design think methodology, right? It's like, how do we ensure that students are getting the most out of every single time and effort that their community building, right? And so one of our pillars, as mentioned, is community engagement. So it's very important to us to seek out those areas, right, as we expand, especially in the world of tech, right? Everything is constantly changing, so we constantly need to design, think, or ideate in that process. So what I'm sharing here, again, this is pre-pandemic. This is 2020, February, okay? We got a chance to do our very first boot camp. And so at our university, we're happy and pleased to share that there's more up and running facilities. But prior to that, we were in construction phase. So meaning we were scarce in space at one point. And so we didn't necessarily have the means to start doing more programming within our campus. We had to work with other universities. It's why you see another logo there, which is Marymount University. So, oops, I see there's more people coming in. That's why you see another logo there. And so with that, we did our very first boot camp collaboration, right? So we went to Marymount, got a chance to take some of our students, and it was really neat because students didn't get a chance to community build outside of within the university constraints. And so we needed to expand to see if there's other students out there that would want to engage with us. And so lo and behold, here we are doing a boot camp. And within the boot camp, I'm going to give you the short of it. Essentially what we focused on, it didn't matter. We were opening up the doors to anyone. So it didn't matter if you had this particular skill, if you had a high rank that, did not matter. You could be completely new and we invited you. And so we went inside their esports lab, if you will. And so their computer tech lab. And so that's where we got a chance to culminate with some of the other students. And we started building more community through networking with other colleges. And so we invited, I believe, other colleges as well, but they had to do it remotely during that time. And so with that being said, our boot camp, what it entailed was a way for students to start player and team developing, right? And so what I mean by that is some of these game titles, they're very comprehensive. And when you're starting to start the whole studying process of the actual game itself. So there's a lot of rules, right? There's a lot of objectives to obtain. When we think about esports, not every game is esports. So certain game titles fall in the criteria of esports. Esports game titles typically have team involvement, right? So we can be essentially in a team and we're going to jump onto a call and we're going to try to obtain this objective, whatever it is for that moment. And so that's where the intentionality and approach is being done for our students and for other students out there around the world that are engaging in these spaces. So just to continue on with what I was sharing about the boot camp, this was a space to essentially learn about a game title, but not only that, as I mentioned earlier, to transfer skills, right? The students that we were obtaining, a lot of them were very shy, didn't speak publicly very much. But I found very quickly that some of our introverted students in this space, they were different people. They were extroverted people. And so it was really neat to see and witness as their advisor, their space, right? This is a space of a high engagement. And when you speak to them about it, they can tell you almost every little small detail. And it was very impressive to hear that. And what I was learning very quickly is the digital literacy that these students had, this language that was very common, so they can obtain the goals and the objectives of the game. So with that being said, we're obtaining this boot camp seminar and we're together and culminating. So we're getting a subject matter expert, somebody that understands the game very well, all the rules, giving you the pointers, which is the gentleman that you're seeing right there in the middle, serving as a coach, if you will. And so what we did during the seminar is after we went into studying the game, now we started the whole competition component. And on top of that, from the competition, the goal is to do player and team development. After a team had won, we had to pause the game and we had our team go up into the podium, which is on top of where you see the whiteboard, and explain the winning strategies, right? Explain it. So this is where students get a chance to now public speak, right? Communicate with other peers to share what it is that they actually did very well or took advantage of from their opponent. And then also replay it, right? In video format, something called video on demand, which is short for VOD. Through these VODs, this is where they showed a lot of the replay of, hey, this is what we did here, knowing that you were doing this over there, as an example. And so it was very interesting to see our students engage in this format. And all of the students, you would think, oh man, I lost, I'm a sore loser, this and that, I don't want to play, blah, blah, blah. No, we treated very as a studious time. The opposing team that did not win, they were taking notes. You know, some of them with a notepad, some of them were typing. And with those notes, they came back with it and essentially implemented changes. So we were understanding that they were going through a gap analysis process. Very much for those that study in the world of business, that's really what we call it, right? It's a gap analysis, which we started adopting this whole new lesson plan of a positive, negative, and delta, right? What is it that we're doing really well? What is it that we're not doing so well? And what are those changes that we can explore, which are the deltas? So this strategy was essentially to bring people together. Lo and behold, we had a lot of novice folks that very quickly became not only really good at the end of the day, but continued on forward, engaging with other peers. And it was really neat to see that growth, right? That's ultimately what we want to see. Not only in the game itself, we could care less about the results. Ultimately, yes, students are going to obtain competitive edges and things of that nature, but ultimately it's that hard and soft skills that we cared about, that we were harboring and fostering. And so that being said, very quickly, this first boot camp that we co-hosted, the president of MCU saw this and was amazed seeing our students run a board meeting in a board meeting fashion. Those were his words, was these students can run a board meeting. And we were supporting students from all different classes, right? Freshman through senior, it didn't matter. And so it was really neat to see that, how well organized the students were because they were interacting in a place of engagement. So lo and behold, we get a tap on the shoulder and Voice of America wants to hear more about our story. And so there is a cover piece there. I'm happy to share the presentation afterwards, Armand, to the group if that's something that they would like to do. And you can research a little bit more about how we interacted and how we planned it. It wasn't just competition that we focused on. We really put on a lot more of the research, the academic side first, and then we believe that if we can do that right, the other pieces can follow along. So it was really neat to see that. I'm going to take a look at the chat in just a second. Yes, more pizza love happening. Fantastic. Anyway, I see a question, a hand raised, and feel free to unmute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, sorry, loud and clear.
You said after the match, you analyzed the strategy with the teammates and like share that like a tactical strategy. Really can help to develop like the engagement or like leadership between the student, or like just I see the esports as just the traditional sports like basketball or baseball, like analysts, like or like just something leadership goes into the analyst, like really work, but it's really new to me. So like how do you like is there any like research or like relating like develop creative like a thinking or like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share resources and where a lot of this stems to. There's a lot of great organizations too that have a lot of curricula around it and how they're building essentially esports ecosystems, right? And you're absolutely right. And thank you for the question, number one. So thank you for that. And forgive me if I didn't hear all of it. It did cut off a little bit, but essentially, I think I got the gist of it. The sports industry and the tech industry really fused together to essentially make what we're seeing today in esports. But again, esports, fairly new. A lot of the students who are the consumers of it are getting a chance to content create much of it, right? So now, not only are you have your students that are engaging in the space, but now they can make future recommendations to inform the industry, and rather they can now start taking roles into the industry to propel the industry and where it is today. So yes, it has a lot of simulation and correlation to traditional sports. And it's interesting that we're saying that word now, right? Traditional sports. What do you mean traditional sports? When I hear sports, it's all sports. But esports has really set itself into its own sphere because of the multidisciplinary aspects that this has, right? And so this is a form of leadership because students are essentially getting a chance to share strategies, critical think, being able to communicate in various ways to drive their points and their, data that they're obtaining, because they have to read a lot of the data that goes into some of these game titles. That's big for us, right? Essentially, when we talk about how do we meet students in the middle. So essentially, this is where we get a chance to expand on that and then start proposing now positions to help students find and navigate really the rigors of a college, career, right? Because it can be very tricky, right, for anyone. What I love about experiences like this with students, some of them that have come undeclared, feel that they find their community, therefore they find enrichment purposes to attend to, and then they find what it is that they want to study. So that's why ultimately for us, that's where the student success comes from, is ultimately finding where you belong, if you will, or feeling that you know where you're going, has a better grasp of what you're going to achieve afterwards, right? And so it has more data on that, knowing that if students belong to something and they have advocacy and agency, well, guess what? They're going to do well during their time in their concentrations, and also definitely excel during their graduation time and actually accomplish the many years that it's going to take for them to complete their degrees, or the years that they spent, right? Depending on what it is that they're looking to do. Because we also do have graduate students in our program as well. So this is where it gets very interesting, how we have students from different age groups in different classes, if you will, culminating in this space from different concentrations on top of that are trying to meet an objective and a goal. So that's, I don't know where else you do that, right? Traditional sports for sure does not do that. And so that's really interesting that we're doing this, especially with the accessibility that esports presents. Great question. If there is there
that's
another
really awakened me, like like perspective to see the sports. Yeah, and actually it's like it's my personal story, but my boy is doing the fencing for about 3 years.
Okay.
And he's not doing well.
Okay.
Obsessed with playing game. So
oh yeah. So
it's better idea to change his like sport to sports that he can stand out. If I know that's also very competitive.
Yeah. And things are very competitive just in nature, right? But I love, and thank you for sharing that too, because you're not the only parent that has shared this with me. I have videos of parent testimonials after parent testimonials, and the conversations that I've had is, Ruben, I've tried, all sports. I've tried multiple sports, and my son or daughter is just not gravitating towards it. But when it comes to gaming and esports, not only do I see him do well or her do well, but they're happy too on top of that. It almost doesn't feel like a stress. But what I learned very quickly in researching is that the parent and student dialogue was not happening. There was no conversation about it. And so for parents, some of them will tell me, well, Ruben, my child is safe because I know they're inside or indoors, right? But the reality is, and this is something that we advocate to when we talk about esports, is because it's very digital, right? We're connecting online and things of that nature. It doesn't mean that they're safe, right? We have to still instill, an etiquette that would essentially not make them ever look bad in those spaces or be trapped or harmed or even express anger of X, Y, and Z nature. So there is a lot of dangers out there that we can definitely look at and poke and prod. But essentially for us, what does it mean to be a student at Dominguez Hills and at the same time participant of esports? Well, there's a responsibility to it, right? Because what you're doing is expressing how others are looking up, right? Especially if you're in the K through 12 looking to go to college, well, you need to carry yourself in the best way possible. So, but yeah, I encourage all sports. It's not to say only esports, but my biggest thing is there's always got to be a balance to everything. And so it's why we proposed even other initiatives like the health and wellness component as well, which I can talk about too and make this into more of a, health and wellness approach, how we started to do this, because it has a lot to do with some of the outcomes that we've obtained here at the university. But anywho, great questions. Thank you so much. And again, for anyone to feel free to stop and pause me at any point. I'm going to move forward to the next slide. So to share our next slide, so this is one of our students, and her name is Alexandra. She's an amazing student. There is YouTube if videos on Alexandra's speech, if you will. If you hear Alexandra's speech, you will understand why I do the work. There's a lot of students that just don't have a community. Alexandra is a proven person of that, and she would attest to that. When I met Alexandra, I could barely get two words, barely. Okay. She didn't feel she was connected all throughout her school days and even her community college days, because she'll tell her story. She came from a community college that's nearby us called El Camino. And when she transferred, she'll tell you the story, how she transferred. She saw esports, right, in our website and made her decision after meeting some of our members and realized this is a really cool community, her words, right? But really what it was is that we're a community that we embrace. Doesn't matter who you are. We want to help, teach, encourage. Like any program, you get what you put in, right? And that's something I share with our students as well. So this was a space to ideate, incubate ideas. And so what Alexandra did was, she's a business and entrepreneur student. She took this concept, understood very quickly her community after speaking to many of our students that played in some of these game titles competitively, right? And the game title, just for anyone that knows esports well, or maybe you heard of it, it's called League of Legends, right? So it's the most common, it's the most oldest, if you will, of esports competitive gaming. It's published by Riot, and so it's been around for over 10 years. So yeah, a little over 10 years. And so anywho, what Alexandra did was she took this concept of, okay, many of our gamers, their controller, if you will, isn't a Joy-Con and buttons. Like I mentioned, only certain game titles pertain to some of these, peripherals. So the keyboard was very key, right? Forgive my pun. The keyboard was very key there. So she started to create her own line of keyboards. And so I put the link there for anyone to reference it, but she started a whole business around this. Oh my goodness, I'll never forget what happened, but I got a phone call from her to say, Ruben, my business grew so fast. Our community loved my keyboard design, right? And so what she does in her business webpage is she shows you the different makes and models that she can make. And so she's making these keyboards, okay? And she grew this project during the time of lockdown. So this was back in 2020, okay? So this is where she started to cultivate her interest. She knew she loved gaming. She was embraced by the community. She saw a problem. She wanted to solve it. And because everybody was in lockdown mode, she said, well, I was with my mom and My mom inspired me as well as our community did, and she supported me. And at the same time, after talking with myself, we wanted to support her in areas that we could teach her how to start building this into an activation, right? And so she started building her keyboards. And what I love is that she custom makes it, and she does a beautiful job. And so she shows you how the keyboard should sound too. So she will tell you these are authentic made keyboards. It's homemade. She gets to do the keyboards along with other members. And so that's what she called me to say, I need more people to help me create keyboards, because I was getting orders left and right. And so it was really neat to see. Our university heard her story and did a cover piece on it so that you can read about it afterwards. But again, none of this was possible without the community, without the intent to solve a problem and researching and ensuring that we were there as educators to support students in their engagement points. So that's how we were taking esports and expanding it to more. So we didn't want to just do competition only. That's great. We need to expand in other areas. And this is what we were learning very quickly from our kids, right? And whenever I say our kids, the students tell me, Ruben, I'm 23 years old, right? I'm not a kid. But essentially, the students that were doing this work thinking, whoa, I didn't know that this inspiration from gaming could lead to this, right? And so this is where the industry started to seek out some of our students and their talents, and then ultimately putting us in a position where we're at today. Okay, I think there's a chat there. Let me take a look. Yay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Alexandra's story is on the chat there for anybody that wants a reference. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic. And our next topic we're going to move on to is how we're going beyond the competitive space of gaming and the career opportunities. But again, at any point, feel free to chime in with any questions. Feel free to take water breaks, whatever it is that anyone needs, and making sure we're good on time. So we're going to move on. Okay. Competitive gaming, right? Where are the careers? What kind of jobs are out there? And again, this slide will be given to you so that you can reference. Feel free to share it, or feel free to contact me if you have more questions. I'm happy to discuss. And so what we learned very quickly during the time of pandemic is that the esports industry did not fall. It only grew. So back in 2019, the industry and what was focused on expanded. So 2019 forecasted what 2022 was going to look like. But those numbers quickly got obtained during the lockdown. So in 1 year, it hit the 3-year projection forecast. So it tells you that the industry is alive and well, right? And so if you ask me, what I tell our students is that anytime there's $1 billion industry, go study it. Doesn't matter what it is. Go study it, go learn about it, learn about how their grassroots began and what it is that led them to where they're at today. So that's where esports became a big focal point for our students. And I was getting students that would tell me, Ruben, I'm not a good gamer. I'm not somebody that competes competitively. I know about it. I know very little of this. It didn't matter. You could have a communication degree or study and then start expanding on the journalism pieces that esports quickly will adopt, right, as another component to the industry. So that right there was something that our students were expanding on. And so there was a cover piece there with, KCRW, which is associated with NPR, and we were featured there. And essentially what we were reporting is high internship numbers. And it's true. Our kids were getting internships. Some of them were paid internships. Some of them were now becoming more than Dominguez Hill students. There were other students that were participating in the space because they were quickly adopting their iteration of what they were concentrating on, finding out more through the industry through the internships, and then quickly understanding that a lot of what they were learning, they were expanding. They were expanding into the industry itself, and that's where the industry started to recruit and started to hire our CSU students. Now, I put here some of the job titles in the middle picture of what are highly seeked out titles. So you can see here, there is nothing to say as pro gamer. There's no pro gamer there, right? I think that's what fascinates people, is that there's product managers, account managers, league managers, a lot of sports producers, people that are in the world of graphic designing, marketing, account executives. These are all reference sources that helps us essentially understand where those industry next leaders are going to be. And that's how we're essentially positioning ourselves with the support of our faculty and our leadership board that we have here at Dominguez. Fantastic. Moving us to the next picture there. We started doing something that we needed to activate fairly soon because we essentially want to help our community. And so I was told very early on, because of the lockdown, the social emotional side of things were not looking so great. And so the areas of students not being able to engage with others, and I was reminded too that some kids, they use school as an outlet, right? Meaning they're not always in the best environments at home, or they don't necessarily have same access and resources. So what we did was we strategically collaborated with one of our neighboring school districts, which is Compton Unified School District, which is like across the street from us, really. And we decided to do our very first mentorship. And so this is where our students, our college students that are in our program, would now mentor high school to middle school students in a game title, running very similar processes in what we did with our boot camp that I mentioned earlier. And from that, this is where we started to learn that the peer-to-peer mentorship was the most effective way to get to a student, especially the students that are very introverted, right? More on the shy side. I would have students, and I was told this by the administration, that some of these students, as they were termed as silent failures, okay? And what does a silent failure mean, quote unquote? Meaning these were kids that don't raise their hand for help. They rather not ask for help because they're too shy, and that's a reality, right? We don't always have, hey, I'm going to ask for help and I get it instantly. Some of them don't have that, right? And so I was learning a lot about our students and who our demographic was. And so from that, our college students gave students essentially more excitement in understanding the game in a whole different way, which was playing the game with an intentionality, right? I mentioned other strategies prior, which I'm going to go back. We did things like gap analysis before we actually played the game. So you would almost think, wait a second, where is the game? The game comes way after. It's the last thing we do. We did exercises, for example, and brought our kinesiologist consultant to teach us about stretching, right? Because esports is very sedentary, right? We're sitting down too much. So how do we increase blood flow? Well, we learned from an expert that was more in the learning of what it is an e-athlete does, right? How you train is not the same way you train if you're going to play football or baseball or soccer or whatever it is. E-athletes are a little bit different in training. We started teaching students about the nutritional values, right? And things of that nature. And so this component became so critical for us, not only for our college students, but of course for our mentees, which are our high school and middle school kids, to learn the proper format, what to aspire to, right? And so very quickly, we were telling, hey, if you got the energy drink there, maybe substitute it with water, right? Because you're going to be talking a lot in this space, and you got to talk quickly, and you have to help your team understand which direction to go, and you have to learn about the game, and you have to learn about the economy of it all. And so, students were essentially trying to gravitate towards getting better, but they didn't know what better meant, right? So we broke it down and became very specific and articulated. Okay, better meant the soft skills. Here it comes, the critical thinking, being strategist, being able to communicate more efficiently, right? So these were some of the words that now middle schoolers were saying during the time of the mentorship, and then now taking that into small group projects that they were working on in their classes. So we were pleased to hear that this enrichment component did a lot of good in getting students out of their shell, feeling accepted, and being able to transfer the skills of what they learned into the next class, right? And so that's how we propelled the program, where it started with just 20 students and now it's grown to over 80, right? In very short period of time. Okay, I think I see some more chats here coming in. Yeah. Yep, I love it. I love the chats. Thank you so much. Okay, esports. This question: esports major students can get paid as much as. Yep. Yes. So the industry again is growing, and this was a question that came in from the chat. What is the pay? And this is something I got from parents too, is that it's not real until there's a job, right? So it's not real until there's a job. Well, for students, what they wanted to share is that, wait a second, this is where we communicate. This is where we hang out. This is where we express ourselves. And from that form, from this modality of gaming to storytell, to be able to share experiences, long lasting ones, right? This is where students were then sharing like, hey, we want to be in this space. And ultimately other industry factors that had to take into account, which are the publishers of some of these games that really control the IP, right? The gaming publishers. And so from that, esports allows things like for us to compete on a collegiate level, and you see professionals, and now you're seeing CIF sanctioning what esports is, deeming it as an actual sport so that students can start competing. And you're only seeing that just now, right? So this is where we get excited, because what it does is starts to give more opportunities for others. As far as the career opportunities, there are a lot globally, not just here in California. California is what I call the mecca of it, because we essentially have a lot of the game publishers here that help move and push and promote what the market's going to look like. But essentially, there's other forms of it, right? There's other organizations that are in the spaces of esports that are looking for certain roles that are coming out of our colleges because, well, these were the consumers. They would best inform, knowing that they have the study and practice, that they came out of an esports program. Therefore, they would be the best to understand it, because the people in those positions right now didn't grow up with esports. Like I can tell you right now, I didn't grow up with esports. So, and many of us probably haven't, right? We can all raise our hands, but our kids are. And so that's where essentially the industry gets excited, knowing that if it's doing well now, it's only going to boom and it's going to look higher, knowing that we have future leaders, being that there are kids. So we're going to move us forward to the next one. All right. How we're going beyond. So there's a little bit of links there too, just so that everybody is aware. So I'm going to link out. And then there's also sources as well, and then some information as well, some of the data key points that we just pulled off as well from our researching team, from our esports leadership board. So from here, again, I mentioned earlier, what are those job titles? Those are some, just to mention some. What are the hard skills? What are the common skills? Those things are labeled here so that way you can reference. But what I want to share really quickly is, how did we expand to help out more students than just DH students? So there is an alliance called the Entertainment Alliance, called the CSUEA. Feel free to look them up. And they offer many options to the industry, right? So you'll see things like Pixar, Disney, and also Sony. You'll see all of them, right? And so what we've done is collaborated with them to create our very first internship pipeline, right, into the esports industry. Not every town and city near them have an esports organization or anything of that matter. So here, because we're geographically located in a very prime spot, there's opportunity. And so this is where we collaborated with our CSUEA to essentially start promoting the internship component. So there's a section on the website that will say Internships and Opportunities, and that's where you can start looking into applying. And some of them can ultimately end up working for us. And I'll share with you in just a moment some of our students that did do some of the work from the Entertainment Alliance, and some of them from our DH students as well. But really what it did too is ultimately build their networks, right? In college, that's what we should be focusing on, is building our networks a lot sooner than after college. So we have to find areas that we hold in common, or we're looking to pursue to understand what students are doing that are exciting them, right? And this is where I mentioned again, meeting them in the middle. And so that's where we started our partnership. And so we have a great relationship there, and couldn't be more thrilled working with other students within the CSU system in the state of California. I see more chats here. Yes, thank you for the links. Yep. There's a lot of alignment there, as Annalisa mentioned right now in the chat, with what it is that we do on the entertainment side. And again, it's one of our pillars, and it's why we focus on it. And it's to pursue career developments and opportunities for our kids. All right, fantastic. So some of the quotes that was mentioned from some of our students, right? These are some of the quotes. So what you're seeing in the background is students that were from the Entertainment Alliance. And so very happy and pleased, you know, they came from different backgrounds. You can see here, one is a video and graphic designer. The other one worked in the areas of public relations, and both of them had their work published by the industry, right? One of them was published by HyperX, which just newly got acquired by HP, which was Carolyn, who you see there. She did a really neat content piece to showcase some of the product alignments. And so how we use what you're seeing today, right? This product here is from HyperX. And so for Brian, he got a chance to do a big publishing piece that was published by ViewSonic. And so that's another tech company that essentially, I don't know if anybody knows, but ViewSonic does displays and monitors. And so all of them are partners of ours as well. So we give them that chance to start developing. And if you ask Brian, for example, Brian was not somebody that played games. He said, I know very little and I'm terrible at all the games. And so he got to immerse himself into a whole new industry. And that's really what it's about, is giving students the field experiences to ultimately obtain, again, the student success strategies that we are advocating for, right? Which is never going to go wrong if you can meet them in the engagement points. All right, I just want to make sure we're okay on time. I see that it's 11. We've got 10, 15 more minutes or Q&A time.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. So there is Q&A. I've got a little bit more to go. I'm happy to speed through that one if you'd like, and then have Q&A shortly after. But this is for you all, so I will leave it up to you, the audience.
I think you can keep going a little bit.
Keep going? Okay, excellent. All right, well, I am pleased to announce, I've shared with you just a story, right? A timeline in a very short succession, because it goes beyond that, right? That now we are moving ourselves into spaces, right? So it's why we mentioned esports facilities, tech labs. And why are they important? Well, the community has overwhelmingly grew. I mentioned it started with 3 students. I support over 500 students now. And so that number is only looking to grow, right? Knowing that there is a space that is coming. And so I'm happy to share some renderings that you're going to see right now of our new space. And so this has a lot to do with how do we incorporate now more curriculum components that will start inviting people to start writing for those pieces that have been in the space, right? Much of it is because, well, those students are still students and many of them haven't yet graduated. So we are looking for students that are looking to expand their horizons in the areas of now teaching this space, so that we can start transferring those skill sets that are being taught and learned into the industry, which is what the industry is looking for. And when I mention the industry, I'm talking about the esports and gaming, but let alone these are tangible experiences that you can write into a resume, collect into electronic portfolio. And that's what's being asked to see, right? It's like, great, you get 4.0s and things of that nature, but we want to see your work. You know, that's another piece. We want to see that. And so this is where we get to harbor that. So I'm going to move us forward. So what you're seeing is the world's first esports incubator lab, right? I use the word incubate, ideate, design. This is a space for us to essentially push that forward notion, so that we understand that esports is constantly going to change, just like everything else. Esports attracts many other components, not only the soft skills that I mentioned, but the hard skills that students are learning pushes them to start looking into other criteria that e-gaming has to offer. And so we have a space where we can incubate your ideas, compete in the competitive collegiate realms, and then also teach, right? The very first to incorporate a classroom component and the very first to create a content creation component in the incubation space. The competition and production, well, that's been done before, but we're happy to incorporate two other components and dimensions that haven't been seen yet. So that will be in our campus this year. So what we did is we took what you're seeing is just an overview picture, but this is inside the library. So you would think, oh my gosh, library, what do you mean? Yes, we took gaming to what it was portrayed in the media, that it's always an underground, in your basement, lower level, in a nook corner somewhere, you're antisocial, this and that. We broke down those media portrayals and really started to expand what esports means today, right? And for us, it means a space for students to create, to be the next leaders, to be the engineers, to be the creatives that they are. So that way they can start incorporating into a program that ultimately fits into the competitive gaming sphere. And so what you're seeing is the rendering from the outside, which is looking in to the lab. And then what we've done too on the second picture there is anyone's invited. We wanted to make this feel like it's open, right? It's glass. It's made where you can see yourself in that space. You do not have to be a gamer to be part of the community. You're essentially learning more about the industry itself and then relating to what you're studying and transferring those skills over. So that's what we've done here at Dominguez Hills. That gets me excited to share the story with you all, knowing that gaming has taken a different approach, if you will, and there's been many disruptions along its timeline when gaming was first introduced, and seeing how we can start bridging something that we call today esports. So I see another chat there. Yeah, the space, I'm excited about it too. I can't wait. Again, I know students are eager, and that's the great thing about having students that are pro advocates and ambassadors of it. They're proven fact that ultimately how we carry ourselves at Dominguez Hills is, with a lot of, perseverance, understanding that many of them are getting their first exposure of esports right now in the collegiate space. And if you ask every single one of our students, they will tell you the same answer. I wish I had this when I was younger. I wish I had this. I would have been a different person had I gotten this when I was in high school or middle school or elementary too, for that nature, not necessarily in competitive space, but creating spaces. But essentially there is a lot of, I wish. Well, that wish became a loud noise and movement that now we have a space that we get excited to share. And then we'll be serving to our community that, quite honestly, many of them don't have accessibility to some of these equipments. And so we'll be able to bring that and activate that. But other than that, want to make sure we're good on time. So this is a perfect time for me to stop and then ask for any questions out there in the audience. Yeah, thank you. I see. Yeah, for sure. I would have loved to. And again, it's about student agency. And like I mentioned earlier, the topic of today was esports is a student success strategy. I hope what I shared with you today really brought some things into light. And if something is not clear, feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Yes, question. Oh, yes, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Yeah. And I believe there were no esports major.
Okay, so I heard a little bit. I said there's no esports major. I can talk to that. So essentially, as I shared when we were developing this, we did the very first certificate program, which is an introduction to esports, which is actually offered through our Office of Extended Education. The approach there when we started that, it was more about training the trainer, right? Which is, this was more directed towards teaching our K through 12 partners to start looking into building esports spaces. And when we talked about spaces, it wasn't facilities alone. It was more online spaces, communities, to actually go and seek out, is there a community out there that are doing this efforts of esports and gaming? So that's what we offered, to start building the ecosystem, so that way students can engage in this factor and then moving them into what we're looking to pursue, which are your minors and your majors in curricula. So it gets us excited because the space that will be arriving very soon, that's what it's going to attract, is for us to essentially start looking into those areas. My biggest thing too, as I move esports along as long as I can here at Dominguez Hills, is to essentially build this organically, right? Not to force a major. Really, the goal is to always listen to where students are gravitating, and at the same time, seeing where the industry gaps are and seeing where those alignments can be. That's how you authentically build your major. There's many ways to do that. And so I've looked and explored. And so for me, it's more about that, because that's how we've organically grew it here at Dominguez Hills. And again, every institution is different and they have their own autonomy and such, but that's where we want to essentially pave that road. So that way we have that inroad now into the major fields that we're looking to pursue. But the neat thing about it all is that the industry is at a booming state, and that there are looking for those that have experiences. So things like mentorships and volunteerism that is out there that we're starting to essentially engage in, and building the ecosystem, have built in students to be high quality candidates, to be attracted and pulled by the resumes, so that way they're moving into being hired into the industry fields. And who would have thought, right? Gaming. For many parents, it's like, oh my gosh, now I see that there's a whole industry behind it. And this isn't just a national, this is a global area of movement and effort because of the accessibilities. But that's where we're at. And I hope I only caught a little bit of it. I'm happy to answer the second part of it. Excellent. Great question.
So what kind of the education, or like a background, no, education in esports, like, because I have two sons in the middle school, and
Okay. Yeah.
like, just, is it better to game, or just have them read like a fantasy book, or
Oh,
like,
yes.
doing
Well,
something like math or English or
No. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. So, it's interesting. Some of my phone calls is to work with other educators in the K through 12. And so a lot of it is, again, balance is key, right, to anything. What I failed to mention too, which I didn't talk about our students' competition, is that many of the students, like I mentioned Alexandra as a story, there's other students too. And I think of Romeo. What we did there is that mentorship and teaching, putting students in a position where they're having to obtain more responsibility and accountability, and putting them into the teacher role does a lot of good. And when they transfer into the competitive space, what I failed to mention is that our students, who you saw in some of the pictures, well, they became national champions of this whole nation. And so 3 times too, not once, twice, but 3 times, as our president says it. And for us, it was very important. Again, we did it with intentionality. We did it with the balance to making sure that our academics are always in good standing. What's different between the traditional and even esports is we raise the bar in our GPAs, and we put it as a minimum requirement is 3.0, not 2.0 or 2.5, 3.0. And so we take the students that are eager to get there, to raise their skill sets. And it's why we mentor some of the mentees, is to keep them up, to know that there's a space like this in the collegiate realm. And then for them to start looking into the game in a more different fashion, right? More mathematical, more strategic, more analytic, to have them explain to you the physics behind that game. And that's when I work with some of our science teachers, they'll tell you, okay, you like to play this game, then great. Tell me what's wrong with the physics here, and have students explain to that, because that's part of strategy when they're selecting their champions and the characters that they'll be playing with, right? And so that's how they know advantages and disadvantages when they go out there to compete. And that's why they're very quick thinkers when it comes to that space, and be able to communicate what they're thinking
that's a big skill. That's a very huge skill that many of our industry partners are looking for, is who can take lead in situations like that. Because even though you may not be competitively gaming as a professional, but we essentially want that as a team player to be part of our industry team organization, excuse me. But yeah, great question. That's a great way to jump in. Fantastic. I can't believe how time flew.
Yes, but Ruben,
yes.
I know that recently your group participated in an event in Vegas.
Oh,
And
yes.
it was a charity event. So maybe you could talk a little bit about it. I did watch the entire.
No way, you did.
Oh yeah, it was really exciting and interesting to watch. And I know
Yes.
that several of our students competed in that fundraising event, and just wanted you to talk a little bit about it because some of our students came back as champions. So if you could maybe just tell the audience about the event and how you got involved in that and the outcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Armand. And again, it's why we're excited about the partnership, the collaboration. I'm happy to share I'll just share really quickly some of the announcements. So esports has a lot of social media components to it, right? So there is a job in social media. If you're a social media manager for some of the industry, there is a role for you. So some of our students do intern for some of the pro teams in their social media pages. So I'm happy and thrilled that what you're seeing in our social media pages is those students that are doing that work, they're being recruited in the esports teams. And so one of the pieces that we got a chance to do earlier this month is compete in a charity event. And we were the only collegiate team that was selected. So there was, I believe, 6 charities, and each of the charities were also selected. They had to submit proposals and things of that nature. And so, like I mentioned, esports is a big viewership than any traditional sport. And it's beating the biggest sport here in our nation in football. And so with that attention and allure and entertainment value, that in itself creates a very entertainment piece of content. And so when we got invited to compete, we got paired up to different charities. And one of the charities that we got paired up was this charity called Pause Your Game. Pause like a pet paw, right? And so that is to help a lot of battered and sheltered animals to save them from euthanasia. And so that's what the organization represented. We competed against some really good teams. And one team in particular was a pro team. And our kids, when I mentioned our kids, our team beat them in overtime. Exciting, right? In that time, I believe over $40,000 was raised in this one-day event. One day, okay? And so from that, you're seeing pictures from our students that these are our 2 students that competed. They're wearing the jerseys. And so these are the organizers, and this is one of the pro players that competed. But you're seeing a big trophy there. So our students got a chance to obtain the trophy, hold the trophy, showcase that this is what the trophy looks like. And so this was a big event in Las Vegas over at the Luxor. And if you asked our students, never would they have thought that their experience was going to take them there. What it did for them personally, yes, it put them on a map to be highly recruited. And both of those students came from our mentorship program. And so again, when we talk about how do we take lead, this is what it looks like, right? We're not just gaming just for the purposes of gaming. There's a lot of intentionality efforts. And so there's a recording attached to it too. A lot of this gets streamed through another platform called Twitch, which is a company owned by Amazon. We're partnered with them as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that you can catch, everything, all the recordings, all that great stuff. And so anyways, there's a way to follow us too. Feel free if you want to follow our socials on the link below. It'd be great, to get your support and things of that nature. So thank you, Armand, for giving us that opportunity too. And I work closely with Armand to, get our kids out there in Vegas and ultimately take the big prize.
Yeah, it was great. I know one Mad Dog did really well. That was one of our
Yes.
students. And I think the other student, was his game name, was it Sane or?
Sean, yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I know. It's the way it's spelled.
Yeah, so it was definitely a fantastic event to watch, and I will send the link to you, to our scholars if they like to check it out, but it was really exciting. Do you also offer, I know you said you partnered with Compton Unified School District, but do you have a program that reaches other students in the K through 12 that are outside of Compton Unified?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we started our first partnership with a learning center in the Boys and Girls Club. And so we're partnered with the two centers over in Long Beach, and very soon we'll be acquiring also the Boys and Girls Club of Carson, which is within our city. The goal is that we expand to more. You know, a facility like this, what it really does is allows us to serve more, right? Ultimately having a space where we can actually culminate in events of that fashion, which you saw in the United by Play, gives us the ability to showcase more, right? How do students engage?
That really becomes a field-based project that is highly needed by the industry to show proof that students can do the work, can work collaboratively, and on top of that, show their talents through their concentrations. I may not be the graphic designer, but I'm really good at organizing. Fantastic. Let's see your organizing skills into action, which a content piece like that ends up becoming what gets published. And imagining to do that at an earlier age, right? Like the students that said, I wish I had this, I wish I had this. Well, imagine if you did it at middle school, let's just say. Well, by the time you get to college, you're going to be a whole different expert and ultimately putting you in a position that's highly recruited within the industry. So, so that's the great news. And again, we're always hopeful to partner with others that are interested to also be part of the space, be part of the movement. And a lab like that really helps us to justify that.
Yeah, that's really great. And I definitely think it would be wonderful when you do expand, because I know I have a 14-year-old nephew. And, you know, of course, he's gaming probably like every other kid at his age. But I hear him, he's creating games online. He's done, you know, on YouTube.
I love that.
And he is always telling the other kids how to play the game, or he's fixing something so he's always directing them and winning. So I see some of the strategy that you are discussing. So yeah, I would definitely love for him to be able to come to the campus, or, you know, where he can meet
Absolutely
and be mentored, and so he could expand that. And I'm sure we have other people on campus that would like to expose that. So it's great that you have your program and that you will possibly expand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Armand, I'll share too, last piece is we work with developers too. So these are student developers. You saw, you know, Alexandra as an example to develop a keyboard. Also, we work with other developers that we had to sign NDA, so I can't disclose, but essentially they get to test out, you know, new game developments, new ideas. Students are also doing that too. We do have a course in game development too. Is it coupled with esports? Yes. I mean, it's another component to get there. So essentially, that's what you're going to be seeing in that space, especially in the classroom dimension, if you will.
That leads them into the content creation and the incubating and the competition and the production. Those are other element factors as well. So excellent. I know I went over on time, so forgive me, but thank you so much for everyone's time. I hope it was you know, enlightening. If anything, it lightens your day. If anything, to seek out more of the industry, feel free to reach us out at any point through our socials. You'll get more email communication coming from Armand and the great team over at the International Office of Education.
Yes, Ruben, thank you so much for presenting today. This definitely is a growing industry. Well, it's $1 billion industry.
Yes.
So, and but it's nice to hear about your program, especially with some of our scholars who many have young children who are probably into this. And it's nice to hear about the program that we have on campus and how well you've connected our students and expanded their opportunities on campus and been a mentor to them. So we really appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate you coming and taking the time to share that with us. So thank